Well, welcome to the 5th Annual 1NKY Summit. I'm Karen Finan, President and CEO of the 1NKY Alliance, and we are pleased to be here at the St. Elizabeth Training and Education Center. Thank you, Garen and St. E, for the use of this beautiful room and the assistance of Chip Tappan with this effort. We have an impressive array of business and community leaders in the room, along with the 1NKY Alliance members, who will lend their voices to the 1NKY vision today as we discuss strides toward unity and the pursuit of excellence in health and education. It's important that we recognize the elected officials who have registered for the summit and are in the room today, including our judges executives, Chris Knuckleman from Kenton County, Gary Moore, Boone County, Steve Pendry, Campbell County. We also have Dennis Keene here today. Dennis, thank you for being here. Kim Kraft, a field rep for Senator Mitch McConnell. Bob Porter from Congressman Massey's office. Stephanie Dietz, State Representative, 65th District. Julie Opicon, Mayor, City of Florence. Jim Hamburg, Mayor, City of Southgate. Jeffrey Biesecker, Campbell County Fiscal Court, and Tom Lampe from the Fiscal Court. Jill Fessler from Silver Grove City Council. Darla Kentenacker from Edgewood City Council, Julie Terra Navarra from Ludlow City Council, and Ryan Salzman from Bellevue City Council. So great show for the elected officials. We also have a great show from the educators in our market today. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here and share your voice with us. A special acknowledgement to Dr. Katie Short Thompson, the new president of Northern Kentucky University. She could not be here today, but sends her wishes. And a call out to Trish Miller, the new president of Notre Dame Academy. Welcome, Trish, to the market. Also a call out to Benita Brown, who served as interim during this time of transition. Benita, thanks for your service. A special call out to the 1NKY Alliance board and team who brought this together today. Thanks to Dr. Joseph Chillo from Thomas More University, Kevin Canifax of Fidelity, and Bob Heil of KLH, and all panel members for their oversight of the content and participation. Special recognition to 1NKY team members Hillary Wolfeck, Ryan Salzman, and Bryce Lakes for all their work on the implementation of this 5th annual gathering. We will cover a variety of topics today as referenced in your program, all at your tables, all focused on accelerating 1NKY. Last year's theme was Imagine and Build Your 22nd Century 1NKY. We built on your feedback and immediately went to work at the outcomes you provided related to education. And based on years of visioning and now completion of several key aspirational initiatives focused on unity, health, and education, we are ready to accelerate to the next phase. And your participation is important, and it serves as the call to action for this summit. As we have for the past 5 years, we will react to your feedback. We will build initiatives around ideas and concepts that move this community forward through tangible, measurable results. The panels are met as rapid rounds during today's session, a way to update and introduce. We know we could spend substantial time on each topic, but we'll keep the program in motion. Today's program is the 2023 1NKY Summit. We'll include panels on unity and health, uncovering the importance and impact of both. The introduction of a new concept, the Corridor of Commerce. Working sessions on Educate NKY and the regional umbrella identity. We are excited for your feedback and so much to cover, so let's get started. The 1NKY Alliance originated in 2017 with a focus on unity and the pursuit of world-class standards in education and health. All this through the time, talent, and treasures of top-level executives from leading companies with a passion for the transformation of Northern Kentucky. Participants on our panels on unity and health today are well known to our community, having created a substantial impact on many fronts. It is my pleasure to welcome these leaders who will lend their insights into these topics. We will begin with the Unity panel and then transition to our health panel today. The Unity at the Core panel, Bill Butler, Chairman of Corporex, Bob Heil, CEO, KLH Engineers, Lacey Starling of Link NKY. Our health panel, Health Focus Creates a Vibrant Community, will be moderated by Sylvia Buxton, Perfetti Van Mel, President and CEO, Garen Colvin, President and CEO of St. Elizabeth Healthcare, Kate Schroeder, President and CEO of Interact for Health, and Chris Atnamia from Citi will be our panelists. Can you feel the energy here? Because we certainly hope so. This is a show of strength for our community and a show of unity as well. Note that these leaders on stage, along with 16 additional member companies and their executives, are responsible for the recent incubation and launch of foundational building blocks for our communities, inclusive of the One NKY Center, the One NKY Frankfurt facility, this One NKY Summit Series, Link NKY, the Breathe Easy Coalition, and Educate NKY over these past 6 years. All of this in collaboration with many of the partners in this room. Thank you to all. For years, we have aspired to reach certain levels of achievement through various aspirations, but this group, in partnership with our growth organizations, our municipalities, our communities, our philanthropists, our elected officials, we own a certain energy and moment in time, and all of us are moving this community forward. Unity has served as a key focus for the One NKY Alliance since its creation in 2017. As part of this panel, the Unity panel, we will discuss the overall concept, opportunities for unity, and the impact of a few recent developments. The background slide you see right now is a variety of stats that basically define Northern Kentucky. I won't read it all, but there's a lot of numbers there with 3 counties, 37 cities, 14 school districts, and we could have added many more numbers. The fragmentation is obvious, but so is the opportunity. And so moving forward with this concept, Bill, I'm going to turn to you. Visioning processes since 1981 have called for unity within Boone, Campbell, and Kenton counties, with initiatives like the Leadership Task Force on Futuristic Governance, a call for the merger of Boone, Campbell, and Kenton counties, which spilled over into subsequent visions in 1995 and 2015. The Kenton County Mayor's Group charted a path in 2016, and there has been work underway on efficiencies through county and city government. This is not a new concept. So Bill, from a private sector standpoint, what is the benefit of uniting? Where should our priorities lie? And is unity really in our grasp?
Well, that last question is a good one. For some reason, it escapes us through all these years. Fragmentation is recognized uniformly amongst us as our single biggest impediment to both economic criteria and also quality of life issues. I mean, it goes to the heart of self-esteem on the part of we people in Northern Kentucky. And I'm a witness to that as a guy that grew up in Covington, looking to the north all the time about who I was and who I wasn't. And as one who's built a business for 58 years and who knows how difficult it is to build what we've done in this location versus other places that were more homogeneous and where the economics were more favorable. This is a topic I could talk on for an hour. I'm sure she's going to ring the bell. I'll do the best I can. I'm going to try to speak in short sentences, and that may be a little bit provocative, but that's kind of at my core anyway. So why unity? I wanted to start with a very fundamental thing. Why unity? Why is it important? And so I begin with the assessment of why did the pioneers, the settlers who floated down the river, not stake out thousands of acres each and live far apart? Rather, they built in cities, and if you go to our little cities, they're 25-foot lots back in those days, and that's part of the economics of the times. But we built cities instead, municipalities, communities, and they were truly communities then. And that's because we need each other. And we need each other for many, many reasons. I'd like to take a minute, if I can, giving you my perception of what happened to us that causes us to be, fragmented as we are. What a lot of people don't know, and we discovered in 1981 doing the research for the first vision statement, was that the banks of the Kentucky shores of the Ohio River were actually settled first as they came down the river. Covington and Newport were early cities back in the 1500s. And they were the bigger cities at the time. But it all grew up on the Ohio side. And so when we were going to pull the trigger on $55 million worth of loan to build an 18-story tower at River Center in Covington, I was scared. And I had to understand why this would work when it hadn't worked and nothing had happened in 70 years. And I got the answer when I discovered that all of our financial institutions were located at 6th Street and 7th Street. And they weren't located on Front Street, like in every other city that's first settled. And so I came to find out that the banks of the river on the Cincinnati side were 14 feet taller, close in, compared to ours. You had to get back to 7th Street to get out of the flooding that happened every year. And we're impacted by 2 rivers and not one. And if you look at the land down there in Covington and Newport, it's low, flat land. No wonder they sold their first good tillable land, farmland, that kind of thing, but it flooded. I think that's what happened to us. So I grew up in Cincinnati. People in Cincinnati liked the hills of Kentucky, so they came over here and they built homes in our hills. And then to protect their environment, they incorporated cities to create municipalities, to provide governance, police, fire, this and that. And I think we ended up with something like 44, and we're down to 38 in all these years since I've been working at it. And somebody's got a chart, I think you've got a chart that says 17 of those have less than 5,000 people.
Right up there.
All right. So I think that's what happened. I think what we're all about at Corporex and what we're all about in this room as a community, as leaders, is reversing 200 years of history. So all of our development, if we can just reverse 200 years of history, all right, which we can in our own way, right? Maybe not exactly, all right? Fragmentation has deprived of us of our identity as people. It's deprived us, therefore, of our sense of bondedness that we should have as community. And I agree, we have a sense of bondedness among us. But we recognize at the same time how fragmented we are and what the divisions are. It's deprived us of our economics. In other words, our ability to pool of our resources. It showed up forever in the financial sector until we had legislation to do cross-county. And then, of course, the banks in Cincinnati bought up all of our banks. We don't have a bank. I mean, we don't have a big bank after 250 years or 300 years. All right? So if you look at all the money and taxes and governmental services and things like that, that were they pooled into some methodology whereby you could leverage that money you could bond more, our counties, municipalities could bond more, and we could do more. So it's just to highlight some of the economics. But those economics come to play in everything that we do, and especially if you're trying to build a business or borrow money and that kind of thing. When I grew up in business, the largest loan that any bank could make in Covington was $500,000. And I had their max at every one of them. And I had to go to Louisville to get a $1 million line of credit from First National Bank of Louisville because the banks in Cincinnati wouldn't work with us because they said we had to come over to Kentucky and use the correspondent bank. Well, they didn't know that word. They didn't know what that word meant. So we need a name to call our own. We don't have a name. Ashland, Kentucky's got a name and a certain pride that goes with it. So our identity with Frankfort, our ability, our clout, so to speak, with Frankfort, our influence in legislation for our own benefit and getting money up here is affected because of our fragmentation. So there's all kinds of reasons. The opposite of fragmentation is unity. I mean, we use that word unity, and I think I'm out of words, so you don't have to ring the bell.
Thank you, Bill. And Bob, I know you have a passion for this topic as well, and especially with the completion of the 1NKY Frankfort facility, with really gives us a presence in Frankfort, just steps from the capital. How do we leverage this asset to bring a more unified community together?
Well, anybody who's gone to Frankfort, there's like 3 ways to get there. I never go 64 because then you come in the back door of Frankfort, right? I always go, you can either go through Georgetown or go down 127 through Owenton. I elect 127 because that takes me right past Buffalo Trace and I can pop my head in there and see if they get anything good on sale that week, right? But no matter which way you go, through Georgetown or through Owenton, you're gonna cross that bridge over the Kentucky River and you're gonna go straight up Capitol Boulevard, beautiful divided boulevard there, and you're gonna go past the Kentucky Teachers Association, the Kentucky Council for Area Development, Kentucky Trucking Association, Republican Party of Kentucky, the Children's Alliance, Kentucky Distillers Association, Developmental Disability Council, the Kentucky Propane Gas Association, and the Commission on Women. And at 418 Capitol Avenue, you're going to go past 1NKY Frankfort. Does anybody see the distinction? Was there any other municipality, any other region of the state represented on Capitol Avenue? This is a game changer, folks, for us. This puts us at the front door of the legislature, and the governor has to drive right past it to get to his house every day, right? And to get to work. So it is a game changer, and thanks to St. Elizabeth for their leadership in making this possible. You know, if you haven't been there, it is a co-working and event space. It's literally 2 blocks from the Capitol building, so you can walk there. The big difference for me that I think this facility presents to us is, who has ever done an advocacy call to Frankfort, to one of the General Assembly? Raise your hand. Okay. So, and I'm sure Roseanne probably has done more than all of us combined, but we all know how it goes. We sit in their tiny little office or their little conference room, and we're on their home turf, and we sit there and grovel for what we want. Well, you know what happens when they walk 2 blocks to get on our turf, right? There's a difference there. There's a real difference. There's a feeling that they are our guests, and we are hospitable toward them. It's a whole different dynamic at play. And you know, when we have last year we had an evening reception for the General Assembly one evening, and I loved it. I think it was the first time I've seen our entire caucus together. Bourbon has the way of bringing people together, I guess, right? So it is a game changer. We have how many sponsoring companies now, Karen?
10 sponsor companies.
10 sponsor companies. I will tell you, my company is one of them, and for good reason. We had the good fortune of being the engineer of record on this $230 million state capitol building renovation. And we host project meetings there with the state people, and they just absolutely love it. The people at DECA, they think it's the coolest thing that we have an office that's 2 blocks because you can't find conference space in the building, right? So it's like we have an office in Frankfurt, 2 blocks from the Capitol building, when we really don't have an office there, It's a powerful tool. I'm telling you, it's a very powerful tool. And, Karen and her team jumped through all kinds of hoops to get this beautiful sign made, the monument sign in front of the building. That took practically an act of Congress. I remember before we even had the sign, before we even finished with the renovation project, 3.5 years ago, it was the day of the inauguration, we put up a temporary sign on the fence that's out front. And I still remember when the governor went by, he took a real long, hard look, like, what is that? And then Senator Stivers, it reminded me of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He looked over and he goes, "Who are those guys?" Right? I was like, yeah. So they've taken notice. What this does, though, is if you think about it, when all of our individual organizations, whether it's the Chamber, St. Elizabeth, whether it's BNKY Growth Partnership, whether it's Duke Energy, whoever it may be, is using that facility, there's certainly the perception that they're asking on behalf of the region, right? Suddenly, those conversations that we have individually start to have a thread through them, right? And suddenly now we have a unified voice, right? Something that we didn't have before this and before Link NKY, right? So I will tell you, don't take my word for it. Let me tell you, I was at the Chamber Day, and they ended their day there, and 2 of the guest speakers, Secretary Jeff Knoll, Economic Development, and Secretary Jim Gray, who we all know well, both made almost the identical comment. They said, as they were addressing the group in this building, said, "This is a great idea. This is a game changer for Northern Kentucky." Thank you.
So an immediate call to action for this group: help us leverage that asset, utilize it. We have hosted hundreds of meetings since it's opened in 2020, co-working space, events, visits. Some organizations come more than others, but if you find yourself in Frankfurt, use the community facility. It's an asset for all of us. And so, Bill, in the same breath, we talk about One NKY Frankfurt, but we also talk about the One NKY Center. And we can see it coming out of the ground now, long in the making. We've got 6 growth organizations, the Life Science Labs, the Northern Kentucky Bar Association, all under one roof. The implications of that are phenomenal. How can we leverage this asset to its fullest extent?
Let me just share, sorry. I like the way you hold it. Like that, right? Let me just share a little bit about how it came together and why it's meaningful. Similarly to One NKY Frankfurt. So now we have One NKY Frankfurt, and we have One NKY headquarters here in Covington, or in One NKY. Okay. So I want to go back to the very early days of when the alliance was formed, and the guys were sitting around the table, guys and gals, and we were talking about what we would do. And of course, the issue of shared governance keeps coming up right away. And but we said, how can we approach governmental officials about bringing together their police, their fire, and all that, and finding more economical and more efficient ways to do things and to unify if we can't get our own act together on a private scale. And so that meant that those 6 growth organizations, Chamber of Commerce, Meet NKY, BNKY, all these organizations if we could get them in one building. Now, this is a project that took 40 years because in the 1981 vision report, it was there, a multi-association building. So the thoughts were there then, 40 years ago. So it took 4 years, and it took contributions from, major contributions from people in this room, and help from the state to subsidize it. And then the advent of the laboratory came in, which added a height to it, floor to it, and made it even more symbolic and meaningful. So we did it, folks. We did it together in a unified way. We did it. We came together, and we somehow made it happen. It took a while. It's a first to try to do what we are doing there. It's a beautiful building. It'll mimic in some respects the Ascent in terms of color and that, so as you come across the bridge, you know, you got a little bookend over here and a bigger bookend over here, but they kind of go together and that kind of thing. So we have a model for coming together, and I think the real significance of it is that. Now, internally, there are lots of benefits that we can learn from, because these agencies, if you will, these growth organizations, each have their own accounting department, each have their own receptionist, at the front door, and all these things. And so the opportunity to synergize some of these things and centralize them for these organizations will save them money. Also free up the CEO, the executive in charge of that organization, to do more because he doesn't have to manage those affairs so much. So those are some of the benefits of synergism that will go on in this building. So, we got one NKY Frankfort, we got one NKY to the north, which is a good symbol for all of us, not just to those people approaching us from the north. Or from wherever, but also for ourselves to be proud of. And so I think in there lies the significance and the importance of that structure to our community and to our progress.
And I'm going to swing over to Garen, because the Life Science Project really put this project over the top. And thanks to the backing of the Kenton County Fiscal Court, Chris Knuckelman and the county commissioners, the ownership by the Port Authority, the support from BNKY, the Catalytic Fund, who was the development partner, so many different groups came together to make this happen. And then there was a separate initiative with the life science labs. And Garen, if you can talk a little bit about that so this group can be informed of what this is and the impact on the community.
Yeah, sure, thank you. One of the things we have to take into consideration is very seldom did we get $15 million from Frankfort. And this was a project where we asked for 10, and because we were able to advocate a little stronger, we ended up with $15 million. And that was one of the largest gifts that Northern Kentucky's ever received. The Life Science Partners is a group of individuals who is going to build a facility which not only will allow a life sciences lab to take place in Covington, but it will also allow, and was really the kind of the linchpin that allowed all of our community organizations to come to one place, and that will be right on the river in Covington. The life sciences, we have, I was just with Kevin Canafax and Bob yesterday, we have a lot more innovation in Northern Kentucky than most people would think about. And this will just be one additional innovative approach that will allow us to bring a lot of individuals who want to bring products and services and then try them out in this facility. And then it will incubate and start companies that hopefully will bring jobs, people, and business and taxes to Northern Kentucky. We're excited as can be. It had an up and down life, but I will tell you, without Karen Finan and without Jeannie Schwar, this building would never be in place. I want to thank B Northern Kentucky and Christina. You guys are doing a magnificent job running the port. keeping all of us in line, and things are going smooth so far, knock on wood. Really looking forward to what this is going to do for our community.
Great. Thank you, Garen. And the philanthropic support that came out of this and surrounded this through the Hale Foundation, the R.C. Durr Foundation, the Dries Foundation, the Horizon Fund, all of these folks came and were an important part of the capital stack, and we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize them as well. But I think too, again, another building block for Northern Kentucky as we build on unity. Lacey is an independent media platform. You were launched 2 years ago. You're now paper of record in 3 counties. There's incredible things happening at Link. Can you share with the audience what has surprised you and maybe what's next for Link?
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. And thank you to the community. Genuinely, what surprised me most, I think, is the amount of uptake that we've gotten on the news that we're putting out in the community every day. Chad Summey and I were having a conversation this morning, and I was talking to him about coming to this event. And I said, in this room, we're able to pull together 200, 250 people, and we're all activated, we're engaged, and we understand the stakes and what's coming next. Well, there are 400,000 people in Northern Kentucky, and they vote, and they have their kids in the school system, and they're looking for jobs, and they're telling their friends if they want to move here or not. And if we can't take the message from here to there, to the other 400,000 people in Northern Kentucky, then none of the initiatives are going to happen. And let me be clear, it's not Link's job to take a stand one way or another on what those initiatives are. But if people don't understand the options and the solutions that are offered, we're never going to become the community that I think most of us believe is possible. And, you talk about the Life Sciences Lab. Wrote a big article about that to help inform people about what a wet lab even is. The One NKY building. When we think about what's happening in Frankfort, we have a Frankfort correspondent who lives in Frankfort during the term of the session. How long has it been since Northern Kentucky has had a dedicated reporter covering what our caucus is doing day in and day out in Frankfort? Those are all really, really important things that we can bring back to the community, really, really important information. And, there's some statistics in the flyer on your table. Our second birthday is actually Friday. So we will be turning officially 2 on Friday. Yes, thank you. The joke that I'm sure many of you are tired of hearing from me is that it's been 2 years, but it only feels like 15. Because trying to do a startup media organization, Bob Heil likes to tell this story. When I was in the interview for this position to see if I could, be the CEO of this company, Greg Fisher and Bob Heil and Bill Butler were the interview panel. Not intimidating at all. Had never met any of them before. And Bill turned to me and he asked me a question. He said, "What scares you about this?" And I said, starting a media company in 2021 kind of scares me. And genuinely, it's still a difficult proposition. So I have to make that clear to everybody. Link has been more successful than any of us expected, including me, and I wrote the business plan, right? So we have been far more successful than I expected. We have 14 full-time staffers now. We publish over 100 stories a week about Northern Kentucky. 100 stories a week about Northern Kentucky. And those stories would not have been told if it weren't for the One NKY Alliance coming together and identifying a need for this organization in the community and incubating us. And so I'm forever grateful to that as someone who has lived in Northern Kentucky for almost 17 years now, that we finally have that news organization that's bringing us that information, right? We've mailed, as of Friday, we will be mailing our next super issue, we will have mailed 1.6 million print newspapers to households in Northern Kentucky, right? And our election issue, the primary election issue, we had poll workers who called us and said, "Hey, we see people walking into the polling stations carrying that primary election guide so they know who they're going to vote for when they go in to vote." That, to me, is the clearest expression of the value of our organization in the community and the point of it, right? If people are more informed, they're more likely to vote. That is only good. And if people are more informed, they're more likely to run for office. If you look at how many uncontested races there are in Northern Kentucky, let's be clear, with 37 or 36 or 38 cities, depends on who you ask, there are a lot of races to run for, right? There's a lot of city councilmen, a lot of city commissioners, a lot of school boards, a lot of everything. So I think most of us need to be elected officials to fill all of those roles in Northern Kentucky. I think we all just need to take a number and take our turn. But so many of those races are uncontested, which means that people don't have a choice, which means that people don't go out to vote, right? So if they think, well, it doesn't make any difference because there's nobody actually to vote for, it's largely symbolic for me to go out, you start to disengage. How do we re-engage folks? We re-engage them through information, we re-engage them through pulling them into the civic process. And that is really the biggest part of our mission. What people like the most are the sports stories, but we really hope that they read the fall football scores and then they stick around a little bit for the conversations about, unity and government in Northern Kentucky. But I'm just ever so grateful for the support we've had. I will say, brace yourselves, we're kicking off our first full-scale fundraising campaign tomorrow. So every time you come to the site, we will be asking you for money. And we hope that you will support us because we do keep part of our mission, part of the things that we set out when we started this was that we would not charge for our digital content because we didn't want people to be restricted from getting the information they needed based on their ability to pay. But that means that those of us who can afford to pay probably should because that makes up about 30% of our operating revenue, the folks who donate to us. So we'll be having a big fundraising campaign and Chad also told me to do this, so Karen, if you get mad, Chad. We have a $75,000 challenge grant that we received last week that will double any donations that folks give to us over the course of our campaign. So if you were thinking about supporting us, now's the time.
Great. Thank you, Lacey. And I think, Bill, you had a final comment as we close out the Unity panel.
I just wanted to add to what Lacey was telling us. The idea that gave rise to Link Media did not happen in the boardroom of the Alliance. It happened in this room. I think it was the very first summit meeting that somebody in the audience said, we need a voice. And the project became known as Get a Voice. And it came back to the Alliance, and then the Alliance said, let's go with it, let's get a voice. So this is a very important meeting, and I just think it's important to recognize that everybody has a vested interest in the progress that's being made.
Great point, Bill. And we're going to shift to the health side of things here now. The importance of a healthy 1NKY community is directly tied to advocacy and infrastructure development through a unified approach that we've been talking about. And as you will hear from this panel, there are several initiatives underway that will help us realize a healthy, vibrant community. It's my pleasure to turn the program over to Sylvia Buxton, President and CEO of North America Perfetti Van Melle, who provided the candy at your table so we can remain healthy. Thank you, Sylvia. She'll take over the program from here.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I had to ask myself, as affectionately known as the Candy Lady, why the heck I was asked to moderate the healthy panel. See, and you're all smiling, so that is exactly the reason why. So it is a clinically proven statistic that when you smile, it releases endorphins that actually make you happier. And when you have brands like Mentos and Airheads at your tables here, those brands make people smile, so therefore we make people healthy. So I have to say that. So I would like to welcome our health panel, and I know that this is one of the key areas that as one Northern Kentucky we've really been focused on for the last few decades, and it's certainly one that we're all passionate about because we know that healthy communities make for healthy economic growth and healthy overall outcomes for our overall community. So I wanted to start with Garen. We know that in Northern Kentucky that our health statistics have actually lagged the national average. So really, as the business and community leaders that we are here today and educators, how can we really pursue a comprehensive smoke-free community? This is the one area, you can boil the ocean relative to health, right? There are so many aspects of health, not only just about smiles. But certainly smoke-free is one that we've decided that we want to really focus on and put our attention towards. So, Garen, what sort of policy efforts do we as a community and business leaders need to be addressing in this area?
Super. Thank you, Sylvia. A comprehensive smoke-free ordinance drives a healthier community with the elimination of tobacco use in public spaces and through the protection of our workforce and children. I'm a numbers guy, so I'm going to share some bad numbers. Northern Kentucky sports a 23% smoking rate against a 14% national average. So basically, 1 in 4 are smoking in Northern Kentucky. We cannot be satisfied with this. This represents, for each employer who has a smoker on their health insurance, it's about a $6,000 cost in health care and lost productivity through the year. Statewide, that's $3 billion of loss as a result of smoking. Tobacco use is tied to poor health throughout all of Kentucky, and it's the origin of multiple types of cancers, not just lung cancer. And Northern Kentucky is at the forefront. I used to say, thank God for Mississippi, but in some of these stats, we are the worst. We are number 1 in lung cancer deaths, and just something we can't be proud of and something that we must eradicate. It's possible, and it's in the hands of our local municipalities and the courage of our local elected officials. With 37 cities, as noted earlier in the program, you might say 38? Okay, 37 or 38. We have our challenges in passing a comprehensive smoke-free ordinance. To date, we have 3 cities that have passed one, so thank you to Dayton, Bellevue, and Highland Heights. Now we have 34 more to go. These are comprehensive ordinances that make a difference in the lives of our communities, as Kentucky is one of only 13 states that doesn't have a smoke-free ordinance statewide. So Roseanne, did you say what can we do? I'm glad you asked, Roseanne. We can do better, Northern Kentucky. At your table is a QR code that will allow you to sign an online petition in support of a smoke-free ordinance. We're going to pause just for a moment to let you try to find it on your page, get your phone up. Bill, if you need any help, I'll come over and help you.
If it makes you sign the petition, I will say that I lost my sister to lung cancer earlier this year. So
sorry.
And she was a decades-long smoker.
While you're going through that, go off script just for a second. I'm sure the mayors of Dayton, Bellevue, and Highland Heights would tell you that they probably heard more from the anti-ordinance people than they did from the people who want to support an ordinance. So for us to be successful in the remaining 34 counties, we have to have a voice. It has to be a unified voice, and we have to be loud and proud and give these city councils and mayors support. Let them know we have their back. Let them know we're going to support their businesses in a greater capacity if they had an ordinance that would prohibit smoking in public places. Health advocacy for Northern Kentucky is extremely important, given the presence of the Covington Life Science Lab and the One NKY Center and the $15 million investment from the Commonwealth. The financial backing from the Kenton County Fiscal Court we need to keep our elected officials engaged and informed on the many initiatives underway. It can make the difference in the impact of any project. They've asked me to talk about something other than the smoking ordinance, and I just wanted to touch just for a second on mental health. We know it's a crisis across the country. We know that we share in that in this community. We are partnered with some behavioral health, but our president of our physician organization, Dr. Heidi Murley, she convened a mental health summit in this facility, just probably last week or 2 weeks ago. The keynote speaker was Joe Burrow's mom, Robin Burrow. She is an educator. and talked about the impact that food insecurities and mental health has on education. So it goes across the board. So mental health is something that I look for more action items coming out of this summit. So more to come on that front. I'm sure just like the One NKY summit that started a few years ago, we'll have follow-up mental health summits. But it was a great day, and it was community-led. And I think just about any nonprofit in Northern Kentucky that deals with mental health was in attendance at that meeting. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Garen. So we've obviously talked a lot about Northern Kentucky here and the importance of us having one unified voice here and one unified approach. But I thought it would also be a good opportunity to turn our attention to our border state to the north, Ohio, given that we also have a very important board member for us, who's Interact for Health CEO Kate Schroeder. So Kate, Ohio is smoke-free. What lessons can we learn from your organization in Ohio and your journey there? And how can your advocacy efforts in Ohio help us learn what to do better here in Northern Kentucky?
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. And just to say, I think there's a lot of areas where Ohio can learn from Kentucky as well. So, Ohio went smoke-free in around 2006, so it's been quite some time. There are many states, as Garen mentioned, there are 37 states that now have statewide indoor smoke-free air. And so I think that's something to think about, that this is possible. In Kentucky, the other large metro areas also have smoke-free indoor air, and it does have a big impact on health. I think in Ohio, one of the things we've learned, there's no silver bullet policy. It is a strategy of multiple policies that you layer on to make the healthy choice the easier choice. Everything from supporting those who want to quit, making indoor air in your restaurants, your bars, your casinos free of secondhand smoke for those that work there. It is around the federal government in 2019 passed a ban on selling all tobacco products to youth. However, that is not enforced. I think since that happened, there's been one FDA visit to this region that we're aware of to enforce that. So unless you have a tobacco retail license in place, which around 11 states do and many municipalities do, Cincinnati has one, to enforce sales to youth, those sales are still continuing. And one area in that I do want to talk about, and I brought some props with me, is around vaping. So if anyone here who is around teenagers, has teenagers, vapes are incredibly prevalent now. Over 1 in 4 high school students in Northern Kentucky has vaped in the last month. And they look like thumb drives, pens. This looks like an Apple Watch. This is a vape. This pops out. This top part pops out, and that's the vape. So this is really prevalent, and states like Kentucky, areas like Northern Kentucky, where it is harder and harder for tobacco companies to sell, particularly sell to youth and other markets. And so, of course, they're driven by revenues, and they're going to increasingly target marketing strategies in areas that are more permissive. And so it has real implications for lives here. As Garen said, Kentucky has the highest rate of tobacco-related deaths in the country. And tobacco deaths are the #1 preventable deaths. So in the country, we lose 480,000 people a year to tobacco-related deaths. That's the equivalent, I don't know if Candace is in the room, of over 3 747s going down every day with preventable deaths. And we are leading that in Kentucky. And I just want to go back to what Bill Butler said earlier. We need each other on this. To change these policies, it is hard, but it is possible. And we have other places that are doing it. And it is really, this is the right forum to work together to help to move these. And to follow on what Garen said around mental health, this is part of mental health. This is way folks turn to substances because of stress in their lives. It is a way of self-medicating. And so we also need to take this broader frame and think about it in the mental health space more broadly on how can we not just focus on reducing tobacco use, but also wrap our arms around the community and work together around the mental health needs as well.
Wow, thank you so much. That's some pretty staggering statistics. And by the way, those vapes were eye-opening for sure. And you have to imagine that folks don't necessarily think of a vape as the same way as picking up a cigarette or a cigar or a pipe, right? I know from my son's perspective, I remember having a conversation with him when he was a teenager about 10 years ago, and he talked about something to do with vaping. Well, that's not unhealthy, Mom. It's just vaping. I said, it's all the same stuff. It just comes in a different carrier. So yeah, pretty amazing, and something that we all need to be thinking about to bring our community to a higher standard of health for sure, and to help all of our families and all of the communities succeed. So I wanted to also now turn my attention to Chris to look at it through the lens of an employer in the area, obviously from Citi. So certainly policy can drive a lot of behavior changes and can really help us to make some big changes. But as we think about infrastructure development, a critical piece in the health strategy. So, as One Kentucky looks towards our future of our community, what deliberate strategies and approaches can we take to health and vitality, which are critical? And what are your perspectives on that?
Thanks, Sylvia. So consider the impact of a front door to Northern Kentucky through a project like Riverfront Commons. Long anticipated, 11.2 miles, spanning 6 river cities from Fort Thomas to Ludlow. And to kind of take Bill's statement earlier, phrase around fragments, taking fragments of trails and making them one. It offers paths for walking, urban hiking, and biking, presents an awesome view of Northern Kentucky region as you enter the Commonwealth from Ohio. I live in downtown Cincinnati, and I get to experience the views of the Northern Kentucky riverfront almost daily. Riverfront Commons is my walking trail. I just have to decide what bridge I'm going to walk across to get there. It's a pretty amazing trail, and I'm just kind of curious, with a show of hands, how many people have visited Riverfront Commons? Okay, good. That's awesome to see. If you participated in Blink, the drone show, I made the mistake of watching it from the Cincinnati side. The best views were actually from Covington, Riverfront Commons, right along the river. It was amazing. So it's not just a benefit of physical health. You also get to experience the arts. You get to experience nature and architecture, which I'm a huge fan of. And speaking of architecture, the One NKY Center, when it's completed, will be this really cool welcome beacon in the front or at the foot of a very iconic bridge. So it's pretty amazing, I think, a great example of infrastructure related to health. The vision of One NKY Riverfront is still very important and at the top of minds of a lot of people in the communities. Connecting trails, our trail systems is also of interest as we connect to become a more healthy community. Many communities in Northern Kentucky have already invested in recreational trails. There's a couple notable examples: Devou Park in Covington, Tower Park in Fort Thomas, the development of Circle Port, which is right in, I guess, the front yard of Citibank where I work, in Erlanger. We need to connect these assets, expand our network, improve our transit options, and really achieve that healthy community that we all desire and deserve. Infrastructure on the health front materializes in some unexpected ways. What else can we imagine? It could be a new state park designation, a sculpture park in a leading city. We could connect to the existing trails that exist in Ohio with the Ohio River Trail and Crown Cincinnati. So many different ideas come to mind. It really is an awesome time to activate and accelerate our dreams in this region.
All right, thank you so much. Well, I wanted to thank all of our health panelists here for giving us some really great insights and thinking about how we can all be healthier together as one Northern Kentucky. And I'm going to pass the program back to Karen.